Well, I think we're going to start. Can you hear me? All right.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, Warren. Did you want to say something before we start? No. Okay. Take it, Maestro. Okay. Well, my name's Tom Neyland. I'm a retired Episcopal priest, and I have been ordained for 58 years. So I've learned a few things, not many, but some, and I enjoy wearing people clothes. I mean, that's one of the perks of retirement, look like you all. So that's great. I love it. Well, you all know each other, and I've met you, and I wanted to talk today about peace and justice. And yeah, fix me up here. It's on, isn't it?
Now it is, yes.
It is on. Thank you.
Now it's on.
Now it's on. Okay, very good. Peace and justice. I didn't have to use a microphone last time I talked here because there wasn't a chainsaw, but there is today. All right, before we get into peace and justice, I want us to think about how we see reality, because every one of us has a different view of reality. When I spoke October 16th in church about peace and justice, I told the story of a man, which is true. On his 64th birthday, he received a pair of sunglasses. Now, these sunglasses looked like a cheap pair of Ray-Ban knockoffs. But the truth is, there was more to it than that. So he thought, well, that's nice, and kind of almost discarded it. But then he put them on, and he couldn't believe his eyes. He was only seeing black and white for 64 years. Now he saw in color. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he did both at the same time. Now, most of us wear glasses at one time or another, and do you know that when you put on a pair of glasses, which your prescription has changed, that you see things more clearly? The story I had was in high school. I had this date with this beautiful girl who was temporarily from California, and we went to the gym, and it was the first time I ever had glasses in my life, and I just thought that people across the floor in the bleachers were blurry. I mean, because that's just what I was used to. Well, I had these glasses on, and all of a sudden I could see them very clearly. I could distinguish them. I could tell what kind of clothes they were wearing and expressions on their faces, and it was wonderful. Well, there are such a thing as, I think, spirit glasses. When we put on the spirit glasses, we see things differently. Now, here's what I'm talking about. I think, Steve, is this? I'm just going to take a chance here. I don't have a little hand mic, but
There's one right here.
I can.
There's one right here.
It's what?
If you want it. You're loud.
Too loud?
No, we can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, I can talk in my normal pulpit voice.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to draw something here. Okay, we have here two more or less circles. Okay, in this first circle, this is the way I think most of us grew up. And here's what's in this circle. Let's see, I'll get over here. There's work, play, social life, finances. Did I miss something? It's not, of course, it's a lot easier to write on a desk. Anyway, so this is supposed to be finances, and this next one is politics. Oh my.
Not necessarily in that order.
Thank you for the commentary. Okay, so we're going to call this secular. All right. This is Monday through Saturday stuff. Now, can you guess what's coming in the other circle?
Oh, Sunday.
Yeah,
Church.
amazing.
Sunday
Okay,
school.
Sunday. Now, here we have God, church, Bible, maybe evangelism, other ministries. You want to add anything to that?
Sunday school.
Okay. Prayer. That's good. Prayer.
Oh,
Sunday school.
giving.
Giving.
My mom always insisted.
Okay. Now we'll call this sacred. Now this is very convenient because as we grew up, perhaps you're like me, that we can do all this stuff on Monday through Saturday, and then we put on some kind of halo, and on Sunday we do this stuff. And that's where God is. What's wrong with this picture? Yes. There's another way of doing this. Since I don't have room, I'll put it over here. Okay. All is sacred. So we're going to take all of this, all of that, and put it over there. Why would we want to do that? Well, guess what? God has something in mind. He wants everything to be sacred. He doesn't want secular sacred stuff. If you look at creation, everything, God looked at it, he gazed at it and said, this is very good. And he wanted people to live in harmony. But the myth story of Adam and Eve, they wanted to find out what else was going on. And so they got some knowledge and made their own choices, and that was not to be one. And what wound up was they got kind of kicked about that because everything was separated. Now we have, over here, a kind of a jigsaw puzzle. And that is because of the separation. You might notice that there's a little violence going on these days, a little tax. People running for office get smeared by the other party. That's all part of Satan's design. Satan is the accuser. And whatever you think of Satan as an angel or not, the point is that when you get away from the sacred and go into that, you also invite evil. You invite people to destroy each other. So we have things like war. And we just grow up with that, and the problem with it is that, well, it's normal. We can't do anything about it. It just happens. It's the way life is. Well, I look at that as driving down a muddy road, and all this mud is coming up and hitting the windshield, and what do we see? We see a lot of mud. Can't see the road. Have to get the car washed for that. Well, this is a kind of a car wash. It removes all that stuff we're looking at, and it says there's more to life than that, and God wants it to be back the way it was. And that's why the book of Revelation talks about the restoration of everything. So we start out as one, blow the thing up, separate everything, and then we put it back together. God puts it back together at the end with our help. Doesn't do it all by God's self. So if you look at that, and you look at peace and justice, you're going to see something, you're going to see peace and justice in a different light. When I grew up, peace was keeping it down, keeping the volume down in the house. Don't fight with your brother, you know. Or it was the end of World War II. Well, that's not peace. That's sort of peacekeeping is what that is. Not peacemaking. There's a huge difference between peacemaking and peacekeeping. Peacemaking is I am at peace, So if I walk into a room and I'm at peace and there are people kind of scrappy, if they're paying any kind of attention, I have some kind of influence over them. Well, I guess I could need this thing. Is it on? Yes, it is. Okay. Take that, chainsaw. All right. So, where was it? Peace and justice. Peace is not just keeping down. Hello. Good to see you guys. That's fine. Peace is not just keeping down war, but it's harmony. It's one with everyone. And then we have justice, which justice looks like to a lot of people, you punish people. You know, they did something bad and you punish them. Maybe put them in jail or worse. But in the Bible, most of the thought is not about retribution. It's about restoration. Justice is for people who are underprivileged and kicked out and rejected. People who don't have the same standing as those in power. And religion, a lot of times, has a bad name because religion tends to be institutional. There are people that make it to the top and they want everybody to do what they do. And the Jews were like that. The Jewish leaders said, if you want to be acceptable as a fellow Jew, sister Jew, that you have to keep all these laws. How many? 613 or something like that. 613 laws. And most of the people were not educated. At least 80% of them weren't. And they couldn't possibly do that. So they were second class. You know, they weren't allowed to do things that the others did. So that's a little bit about justice, but that's not what justice is in the Bible. Not God's view of justice. Justice is what everybody gets. When Jesus talks about them and the Sermon on the Mount, he includes everybody that's put down, and he says, you're going to be blessed. You're going to have all you need. In fact, you're going to be upside down. You're going to be the top. And these people that are controlling you are going to be on the bottom because the whole system has changed. I think eventually in that everybody will be equal, everybody will get the same, and everybody will know that. But in the meantime, it's this upside down business where a few people control everybody. And if we get into justice, you know, whose side are we on? Are we on the side of the controlling people or the underprivileged? And if we are, what can we do to help them? There's three things. Richard Rohr, Franciscan priest, I don't know if you know him. Okay, one of Becky does. Richard Rohr is a priest who writes about a lot of things, and one of the things he says is that I think when it comes to helping people with a social ministry, there are three approaches. Imagine that there's a river. The river is overflowing its banks. There are people in the river who are drowning. There are other people standing by the river who are in danger of falling in. And then there's a way to change that. We'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so he says there are these three different ministries, and one is to save the people who are drowning, and what he means as an example of that is they have immediate needs. So some people in that river need food. Okay, what does St. Francis do to help people who need food? Well, we have the community food bank here, and we support that. And sometimes we bring food to them. That's number one. That's helping people who have an immediate need. Number two is there are people that are in danger of falling in, and we can do a couple of things to help them, and one has to do with health, and the other has to do with, education. The other has to do with healing. So what are we doing there? Well, education, we support the Imago Dei. It's a middle school for kids that weren't going to be able to graduate if they didn't go there, and we support them. So that's one way to do it. And as far as healing is concerned, we have a ministry to those who have a grief and loss ministry here. And that's a healing ministry. to help those who need that. And we've either all been there or we know somebody who has. The third thing is the one that takes the most guts. The third thing is probably the one that most of us are not going to get involved with, but it would be a good thing if we thought about it, and that is called changing the system. Now, Roar uses an example of building a dam toward the head of the river, and the dam will keep the river from overflowing. Changing the system isn't easy, but it's something that for a long time people didn't think much about. But the more we've explored it, the more we want to do it, or if we get interested in either doing it or helping somebody else. In the Episcopal Church, which I guess you've all heard Catholic Light by now. In the Episcopal Church, we have a group called Episcopal Peace Fellowship. Episcopal Peace Fellowship has been in business for 83 years. It started in 1929. It was against the first participation in the First World War. Since then, there are many ways that Episcopal Peace Fellowship can help. They help in all three of the categories that I was just talking about. And I've talked with a couple of the heads of that, and we are starting to look into that as a church to see if that would fit our want to participate in that. And they have brochures, they have all kinds of support information, even like how to talk to somebody, like who's in your family and they're a different political party and it's uncomfortable, to get political with them. Well, they have somebody that can help with that. They have all kinds of resources, and I have to admit, I've known about EPF. I have a good friend who was head of that, Bob Davidson, priest, retired now, and but I didn't really know hardly anything about it until I came here and got into this. So thank you, Warren. The peace and justice thing is such an important value of Francis. Francis, had 4 values: compassion, peace and justice, care for creation, and spirituality. Spirituality being kind of the top, because that's oneness. So I'm really excited about EPF, and EPF has a head named Melanie Atha, A-T-H-A, who comes to Tucson every January. And if we want, we can ask her to speak one Sunday or sometime while she's here. It just, I think, just makes us more alive about what's going on in the world and what we can do to help, because so often we shrug our shoulders and say, well, that's the way it is. Life is like that. We can't do anything about it. It's just, and we get numb, So I think that's a blessing. I'll go back to my print here. This is something that the Right Reverend Dan Edwards, retired Bishop of Nevada, wrote. He's a group convener and peace builder in EPF. He said, before one can be a peacemaker, one must become a person of peace. Peace with ourselves. Then he says, you've seen it happen. Someone honks their horn, shouts obscenities, acts aggressively, sometimes prompted by injustice, other times by some inconvenience or affront to their sense of self-importance. The people around them catch the passion like a virus and either join in or react against the instigator. There is never any shortage of blasting cap people. That's an interesting, terrible, blasting cap people to make violence explode. Violence is such a common way of being in the world that it is hard for any of us to be otherwise. Oh, yes, we've talked about moving to Canada. Okay, so in the face of this way of the world, Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers. You have also seen this. Peacemaking, now this is really important here. Peacemaking has clear political implications, challenging all forms of systemic violence, injustice, and oppression. But in itself, peacemaking is a spirituality before it is a political agenda. Any political agenda for peace and justice not grounded in such a spirituality is doomed. So the first step, which will be taken again and again each day, is to become people of peace. So it's aggressive to see reality through our own agendas. This is a phrase, a sentence I like. This kind of mindset is being down on what you are not up on. Okay? Did you know that 80% of the voters, according to a recent NBC poll, in one party say the other party is too dangerous for the country? Man. Aggression is always predicated on fantasy. Now, I love this. Listen to this. Aggression is predicated on fantasy. It is the imagination's preemptive strike upon sovereign facts whose reality it refuses to concede, much less to worship. To see the sovereignty of what is seen is quietly really to worship, and to articulate such worship wages peace. In other words, he's saying that if you see reality as it is, in all its forms, goodness, you are waging peace. It's hard for some people to see the darkness, evil, in parentheses, in themselves, but even harder to see that their own light, goodness, easier to attack and blame others because they see it or believe they see it in others but not themselves. They are full of fear. The foundation of hate is fear. And I'm reminded that each of us has darkness and light inside of us. It's okay to have darkness because we do, we're human. But to blame ourselves or to refuse to forgive ourselves for that darkness, some mistakes we make or some attitudes we have or something, to refuse to forgive ourselves blocks us from being people of peace. So if we forgive ourselves for our own darkness, we will not accuse others of their darkness. We will not blame them for their darkness. The example I gave on the 16th was the ex-veteran. The ex-veteran in Muncie, Indiana. He was fighting in Afghanistan against Muslims. And when he came back home, a number of Muslims settled into Muncie, and they had a mosque. And he thought, this is terrible because these people are cancer. I'm going to get rid of them. And then myself, too, to that. So he he went into the mosque, prepared to blow the whole thing up, but he was received with kindness. People invited him out for dinner, and they just loved him. You know what happened? This business about killing them just sort of melted away, and the funny thing about it is he became a Muslim. But the point is that he met love at the critical moment that he'd never expected. And he learned something about himself. He had never forgiven himself for the killing that he did. He'd never faced it. He had never forgiven himself. So that's why it's important to forgive ourselves. You may know of the philosopher Hannah Arendt, A-R-E-N-D-T. She's a Holocaust survivor. She died in 1975. But she had a book called Lying in Politics. She says in this book that the surest long-term result of brainwashing is a peculiar kind of cynicism, an absolute refusal to believe in the truth of anything, no matter how well this truth may be established. But if we see clear-eyed, if we see past the ego, if we really see God and God's creation, we can let our faith, which is already in us, come out. And we can see and appreciate and become people of peace, capable of waging peace in a world at war. In classical moral theology, such clear-eyed and biased seeing is called prudentia. It was regarded as the mother of all virtues. We're talking here about clear-eyed seeing. This is not mystical boo-boo here. We're seeing reality as it is. Well, if we live Jesus' values, to love our neighbor as ourselves and neighbor as everybody else, what would our politics look like? If all Christians lived Jesus' values, what would their politics look like? Look at Francis and Fred. Francis loved all people, kissed lepers. He saw Jesus in them. Fred Rogers, the same. I mentioned this at the men's meeting earlier, that we don't look anything like what we are on the outside, because those are appearances. What we are like inside is very beautiful. And I mentioned Thomas Merton's vision on the corner of 4th and Walnut in Louisville, Kentucky. He was just walking along and he saw all these people and he couldn't believe it. They were shining as the sun. They were so, he said, I just would like to fall down and worship them. Can you imagine? Well, he had that vision. And that's a vision that I believe is really true. We just don't believe how awesome we are. And that means that we have more power than we think. Jesus said that Christians are the salt and light of the earth, a beacon to the world around it. Martin Luther King put it this way: the church must be reminded that it is not the master or the servant of the state, but rather the conscience of the state. See, that's what the prophets were. They were conscious. They were Jews. They were inside, but they were on the edge of the inside because they were the conscience of the leaders. The church, King said, it must be the guide and the critic of the state and never its tool. It's a danger of being in some places today. If the church does not recapture its prophetic zeal, I get this, it will become an irrelevant social club without moral or spiritual authority. And then the bishop says, the important thing is that we should all be doing something for the rest of the world. We have to pay back, particularly those of us born into privilege and comfort. We also must respect and support the other two levels, even if we cannot do them. Avoid all comparisons about better or lesser, more committed or less committed. Those are all ego games. Let's use our different gifts to create a unity in the work of service, as Ephesians says. Back one another up without criticism or competition. Only in our peaceful mutual honoring do we show forth the glory of God. Now, what I'd like to do now is ask you, we can either do this, I don't know how comfortable you are sharing here, whether you need to break into small groups or not, but if you do, tell me, but if you don't, just tell me what you do now. We can start there. What you do now in terms of those three ministries, helping people in need, supporting education and healing, or even changing the system. You like that, Becky? All right, so anybody else want to comment on that? And I'll, since I've got the mic, this is the only one, I guess, I'll just pass it around or something. Yeah, Joyce.
No, Joyce is gonna speak up.
Okay, can you hear Joyce? Does she need the mic?
Okay. Since 1985, I've been involved with a program for disabled children in California. And what we do is we put these kids on horseback, and they do vaulting or gymnastic kind of moves on horseback. So they're using their whole bodies and not just riding on a trail. When I moved here, they asked me to continue to be on the board of directors, which I have continued to do willingly and happily. So that's what I'm doing to help disabled kids.
Great, thanks for sharing that.
Oh, another thing, yes, sorry, Warren reminded me. I'm also involved in a program called Books for Classrooms, which some of you probably have heard of by now. And that is putting books into the classrooms here in Arizona, in our area, in Pima County, into the schools, the poor schools who are not funded well. There are schools in Pima County who have one book for every 6 children
No.
in a classroom. Books in classrooms, through what we do, is getting books into those classrooms. And any of you want to get involved, you can. We have a lot of ways that people can become involved. Just talk to me.
Thank you, Joyce.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. That's wonderful. I think people are doing things that we just don't hear about. That shows that the kingdom is on its way. Thank you.
I'll do my part.
Judy, would you?
And one of the organizations that I'm
Let
involved.
me give you a microphone in case somebody at the other end can't.
One of the organizations I'm involved with is the American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. And this came out of the 7 pilgrimages I've led to the Holy Land for seminarians and others. And the American Friends is a fundraising organization in the United States. And the money that they raise goes to the various clinics and schools and hospitals in the Diocese of Jerusalem in the Middle East. And that includes school for the deaf and blind, some of the Episcopal schools, a clinic, and a hospital that serves children with all sorts of physical disabilities. And their work stretches out not just to the children themselves, but to the families of those who are supporting those children. So, good organization.
Thank you, Judy. You can do that.
My name is Charlotte, and I have a ministry here called Spiritual Direction, and it is not telling, it is a process of sharing and guidance to go deeper into a very intimate personal relationship with Christ. And each of us has a spirit within us, and Jesus' Holy Spirit is also in us. And what I do in spiritual direction is help a person develop that intimate personal relationship with Christ. And it's very rewarding for me, but it's also a wonderful way to live life from a deeper sense of being in intimacy with Christ.
You good?
If you all take a look at the brochure that was in your bulletin this last Sunday, and if you didn't get one, there's some over there on the counter about Francis' his values. In each column, there is a list of the different things that you can get involved with here at St. Francis that will be part of peace and justice.
Just real quickly, while you're doing that, our whole church was involved 5 years ago with bringing that family from Afghanistan.
That's right.
And we did tremendous work, and they have prospered so well and are still remembering what we did for them.
Mhm. Becky?
I do a little bit of border ministry with the Samaritans. If you're not familiar with the Samaritans, they are here in Green Valley as well as in Tucson. And they do many wonderful things. They feed at Keno, they do water drops, they go out and search for migrants that may be lost on the desert. And what I do is I work with the deportees that, right on the border. We're on the other side, on the Sonoran side of Nogales. And we give them a granola bar. We have a Spanish speaker who can find out what their needs might be. So if we can get them to a shelter or over to Keno where they can get advice from attorneys or social workers. The main thing is just to make them feel welcome, because what they have is what they have, period.
Anybody else over here? Yeah. Kirsten?
I'm Kirsten, and prior to moving here from Chicago a year ago, I volunteered with Chicago Cares, and so I was working, so things were like, it's called Done in a Day. So we would do clean parks, organize libraries, do different things like that. And now I'm looking at an organization in Tucson that does English as a second language as a tutor. And we do donations to the food bank here in Green Valley.
Great.
I'm Diane.
Hello, Diane.
Hello, Tom. And my husband and I have, oh boy,
She's got
not
the mic.
again.
Closer to your mouth.
Okay. We have somebody that we come in contact with that's become our friend. And he is a felon, and he also has had he was in prison for 20 years and has been on parole for 5 years, and he's now off that. And he has a very difficult time finding places to live and places to work. Thank you. And so I did what you call a self-directed IRA. And I don't know if any of you know what that is, but all your money, the money you want to invest is put into a trust. And then the trust handler actually is the one that puts out the money and brings in the money, because you can't, touch it if it's an IRA yourself, except for your minimum distribution. And I purchased a place for him to live. And I did it with my IRA, and I don't have to charge him very much to live there. And he now has a dog that's just making a wonderful contribution in his life. And we do things that let him know that we trust him. And so he's in our house a lot. We've met his mother, and his mother has stayed with us when she's come to visit him. He's a wonderful artist, so we have some of his artwork hanging in our home, which makes him feel very proud. And the fact that Don and I trust him and value him as a person is very difficult for people who have had serious felonies to get, any kind of felony, but to get respect in the community. And I actually brought him over one time to one of the deacons and introduced him when we were going to be away for the summer. And I was hoping that he would start coming to this church. But he did come for Thanksgiving last year, and hopefully he'll come this year, and we're going to be here. We really care about him. And my son is a forensic psychologist, and
and a lawyer. And so the people that he works with are criminally insane generally. And he also serves as an expert witness. And he has been very, he's had a lot of trepidation about Don and I, being in close contact with this person. And it just fills my heart that we're able to do it. And he certainly proved himself well over by having a nice place to live. I mean, it's not anything that special, but it still is a very nice place to live. And it makes me really happy to have known somebody that suffered as much as he has through the guilt and through everything. He has a wonderful family. And they live in Texas, and that's where he was in prison. So that's my story, and hopefully I like to live that way in many ways. But here we go. You want roll?
No. You want else?
Anybody else?
I guess I'll take it for now. When you said prison, it reminds me that we have a prison ministry here. And we have a number of women who, if Rena were here, she could speak eloquently to it, but there's a number of women in prison in Arizona, Pima County, who the worst thing they did was to use marijuana. And they have children. And we send cards to both the mothers and the children, letting them know that we're praying for them. I don't know if this is true, but in the series Highway to Heaven, anybody seen that? Well, there was an episode, a prison in Pima County in the episode. It said Pima County, Arizona. No doubt it was here. And this prison did not have a visitation time for families. And they pushed for it and they got it. Now, I don't know if this prison does or not, but that was the story. Anything that, and what you're saying is that when we give of our own, we get it back double. We receive a joy of what happened. Yeah. Judy, you got the control right. I mean,
Yeah, control.
When I was living in California, the church in St. Mark's in Upland did a program called Get on the Bus. And I've been thinking about it, maybe that we could do something like that here. It takes a lot of organization now. But for the women who are in prison and have children, we provide a day that we gather the children in, and they're each given like a little gift bag. But we take them to the prison, and this has to be arranged with the prison people in advance. But the children are allowed to visit their parent at the prison and essentially spend a good part of the day with them. And then they're brought back on the bus and,
nice.
But it's the church that organizes this and provides the bus and the personnel to, guide the children through that day and all, and provide some even minimal counseling if there are problems or issues. But it was a wonderful program. I don't know if it's done here in Arizona.
What I'd like to do now is I just thought of this is what attracted you to St. Francis? Those of you who are Catholic or came here from another church. If you care to speak about it, I would like to know, because we oftentimes are seen differently by other people than we see ourselves. Funny how that works. But would anybody care to comment?
Here she goes again. I was attracted to St. Francis because I was very busy in St. George's Episcopal Church in La Cañada, California. I was a librarian for 20 years. I was an acolyte, senior warden a couple times. And as I said, I swept the floors too. And you're supposed to laugh. Thank you. I must have been Becky. Anyways, when I knew that I was going to move here, I emailed the church. I emailed the priest at church. I had no idea who it was. And told him I was moving here and what my background was. And just said that I hoped that I was able to continue here what I had done in California. I feel my calling is being a librarian and an acolyte. It's taken me a number of years to realize that calling, but I feel that way. And so when I got here, Father Colville, was that his name? When I introduced myself to him, he said, "Oh, you're the gal who wants to be the librarian. Let me show you the library." Well, I don't know if any of you guys saw the library. Becky's shaking her head. It wasn't a mess.
It was a mess.
But,
It wasn't a mess, but it was a mess.
okay.
It looked nice.
No,
And,
it was neglected.
well, yeah, it
It was
was.
neglected because
It
nobody was
it
here.
was neglected, but the people who had gotten it together the way they had were not librarians. They did have the help of Charlie Gardner, who was a retired librarian. And he told me that he had looked at books and helped them with categorizing them the way they were. So I just looked at it and thought, okay, God, you called me. Now give me the strength to do it. So that's why. So I guess selfishly, I've come to St. Francis.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We'll do it again. Getting too California people here.
Most of you know that my brother Joe and his wife Ray have been long-time members of St. Francis. They've lived in Green Valley for over 20 years. And I used to visit them when I lived in California. It was an 8.5-hour drive, but anyway. And when it came time for me to retire for the third time and come here to Arizona and to Green Valley, I had told them, frankly, that if I didn't like the church, I wasn't coming here. But over the years that I had visited them, and if it was over a weekend, we would come to church here, and I really liked it. I liked the physical buildings. I liked the liturgy particularly. And the people were so incredibly friendly. And I have not always found that. I used to do a lot of supply work in California, which meant that I would supply at a church. I would be their priest for a weekend when a priest was on vacation or something. I did that in 44 different congregations in California. And there were some very friendly congregations, and there were some very cold congregations. So I was thrilled that St. Francis was a church that I felt comfortable coming to.
I think we've
Even if I
moved-
just sat in the pew, even if I didn't exercise my priestly ministry, it was good.
I think we've moved hopefully past the point where the joke about Episcopalians is that many are cold, but few are frozen.
The frozen chosen, or chosen.
Frozen chosen.
What is it? Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
Here goes, Tom.
Oh, back there, Kirsten. Do you have
I was raised as a Catholic, but since college days, I really not practiced really religion. I'm more spiritual. And then my husband and I moved here a year ago, and I started just things that are going on, and I just wanted to become not just spiritual, but I wanted to just come back to a church that I think that I felt like I belonged to. So I saw the website for St. Francis, and there were things that appealed to me about the church. It's inclusive, it aligns more with my beliefs. And so I met with Father Warren, and we talked about some of those things. And so I am coming to these classes because I really want to become more involved and give back to the community.
Thing, since
Oh,
we-
Diane, okay.
Okay. As we know, I have a hard time with the mic. But Don and I have been involved with the Afghan family, for a long time too. And the two of us were asked to help them, well, they didn't ask us, we offered to help them vote because they got their citizenship. And it was really hard for us to not say,
Mark this one.
And Don actually took that part because even though I'm not comfortable with the mic, I have a hard time keeping things to myself. And but anyway, the Afghan family is coming for Thanksgiving
Yay!
again this year, and they are just the most adorable thing. Don, the family, and Don also I celebrated in a big way his 80th birthday, which he's
Big.
now 82. But anyway, they came to that also, which is, there are opportunities that you have to be inclusive with them that are outside the church. And they really loved it. So I'd like to encourage any of you who'd like to get to know them better. They're going to be here Thanksgiving.
Thanks. I have a concluding prayer, but first I want to thank Tom. What a good name, Cadwallader. What an amazing name. Cadwallader is Welsh. It means battle leader. That's what you are. Anyway, and Gloria. Thanks for doing this, Tom, because you can watch this later if something you missed, or invite your friends or somebody over there. They can't think of anything to do. But anyway, this is recorded for posterity. I'm so excited to look at it too. Anyway, thank you all for being here. And what's next? We're on next Tuesday.
Oh, next week will be a chance to tour the church.
Okay.
And the sacristy, and to be able to see everything from what we use in worship to what is in the church itself. So Father Ted Holt is supposed to be part of that also, since he's part of the early years of the construction and growing of the campus. So he'll be able to answer some questions too.
Right. Yeah, he knew what it used to look like.
Anybody who wants a tour
Yeah.
and wants to learn a bit about our church.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. What's that, Cheryl? Oh, no.
Some of these folks may have some questions,
So, may have some questions.
Yeah.
You have questions?
or want to know something.
All right. I think we were already asking for that, but you never know.
Yeah.
So if you think of something after the prayer, feel free to ask. I didn't plan this, but it's 12 o'clock. The Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Let us pray. Grant us, Lord God, a vision of your world as your love would have it. A world where the weak are protected and none go hungry or poor. A world where the riches of creation are shared and everyone can enjoy them. A world where different races and cultures live in harmony and mutual respect. A world where peace is built with justice, and justice is guided by love. Give us the inspiration and courage to build it through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.